Hey guys, this is Trevor Reed, and welcome to the first episode of From the World to Mānoa. The idea behind this show is that every Friday at 3:30 p.m., a new show is going to be released for you guys to tune into. And what the shows will consist of is sort of me interacting with a different random student from campus, UH Mānoa. And I'm going to be talking with them about where they came from, how they got to Hawaii, kind of why they decided to come to Hawaii, and kind of just who they are as an individual. And it's going to be a little bit different of a concept than I'm used to. You know, with my journalistic background, I'm used to interviewing people and kind of asking them questions that are more specific. And this is going to be more conversational based and not asking them so much about what they know, but more just who they are. And I'm really excited, and I think it's going to be really killer to just talk to different people and just find out, you know, who we're going to school with, who's walking around our campus. So, without further ado, let's kick it.
Hi, I'm Dane Gomsrud. It's great to be here. I'm 19. I'm a sophomore, and I'm a sophomore at UH.
Right on. All right, Dane. So where are you from?
I'm from Walla Walla, Washington, southeastern Washington. So.
And is that like, what does the population look like there? Like, not the exact, but like, I mean, like, how does your town, I guess, look? Is it big? Is it small?
It's small town vibes for sure. It's a high school of about 2,000 people. My graduating class was about 200, so nothing too fancy. I think it's been growing lately, but you know, small town, it's not a lot to do.
And so I guess the first question I have, like, I've been to Washington before, and when I went, it was during the summer and it was still pretty dark and it was raining and very cloudy. How did you end up in Hawaii? Like, did the weather have anything to do with it? Like, what were the factors that kind of led into that?
Well, a big distinction is a lot of the time you think of Washington, you do think of dark and rainy. I'm from the southeast, the Washington High Desert. It's dry, technically a desert, so it is a very like it's a city that's in sort of a rural area. So, you know, in a small rural town, someone like me, it's a lot to sort of take. As I was getting older, I was realizing I have seen so little of the world. There's so much more that I need to see. What's the farthest place I can go and still get, you know, decent financial aid and you make it work for myself? And early high school, I found out UH was part of the WUI program, so that set my sights on that. And 4 years later, I was here, and 2 years later, I'm a sophomore. So
That's awesome. I feel like WUI is such a big thing when we talk about like UH, or like when I talk to people about going to Oregon and stuff. Although I don't think University of Oregon does WUI anymore, but everyone's like, that's just always one of the reasons is WUI. It's funny. So I guess my question is, as far as like your background and like who you are as a person back in Washington, how does that translate to like living in Hawaii? And like, would you say that you're still like, I guess like what characteristics that you've learned in Washington that make you kind of unique to being someone from Washington, how does that translate to living in Hawaii and like how you interact with people? And like, does that make sense? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think something that's sort of unique about my experience is it was a very small, Walla Walla is sort of a Republicanish town. It's a college town also. So I've grown up basically on a college campus, been around college students for my entire life. But sort of the things that are uniquely me, my grandparents and my parents, they sort of instilled this love of art and music, and I have all these, at least to me, they're pretty unique. It's things that I really pride myself in being part of who I am, and they've sort of built me to become this, you know, I changed my major from business to art because I've realized here there's so many more opportunities for me to express my artistic capabilities that I just wasn't really getting formally in Walla Walla. So I think something that's definitely helped is now I have sort of the space to grow. It was a kind of a big fish in a small pond, but now it's, sort of, I've evened it out.
Is that somewhere you, like, do you think after going to school you would go back for a little bit? Is Washington somewhere you might, like, do you see yourself settling just for a little bit maybe?
I think it would definitely be nice to spend more time with my folks after college. I know I haven't been the best about communication with my sisters, with my parents, my grandparents. I think going back to Walla Walla for a while, at least spend a good amount of time with my grandparents after I graduate, because I went from seeing them all the time to now I see them twice a year, and it's been hard for me, it's been hard for them. So I think once I have my degree, once I'm out of college or before grad school, I would like to go back and relive some of the things that I could never experience in Walla Walla as an adult, because it's a very big wine community. So always I could go back and taste. I could go back and whatever. That would open a lot of doors. So I think it is going to be interesting to see how it is different as an adult than it was growing up.
So, okay, so I want to go back a few steps. So you were talking about art. What is your major?
Currently film. I'm trying to be an animator.
Okay. And you were telling me earlier that you do like a 3D animation class, right? Or something. So what was it? What's the exact title?
It's 3D animation. I use Maya Autodesk software to do 3D rigging and modeling and animating.
Very cool. So I guess I'm kind of going to bring this into a question about culture. So just like speaking with you and like seeing your vibe, you actually remind me a lot of myself, like years ago, like not a long time. I make that sound like I'm like 30 years old, but like like in high school, like your vibe was definitely like how I was and stuff. And it's like, it's interesting because like it brings back a weird memory where I'm like, that was such a cool time. I'm from California, and like the culture, it's like, especially being in Hawaii, it's such like a separated culture from the rest of the US, I guess. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like these native people that are like trying to live their lives while Western influence is here as well. I guess what I'm trying to ask is like culture in Washington. I know like we can kind of pick and choose parts of our culture too, but like as far as like culture in Washington, is it kind of strange coming to like the islands and like being a part of kind of what I just explained? Like obviously we're in the more like touristy part of the islands, but like kind of like interacting with the natives and like I don't know, just like I personally feel like I got sort of a culture shock when I came here, just because I was coming from California. I'm around a lot more of that artsy, like just so many different cultures clashing, and there's so much more going on. And like I guess I don't know what Washington is like, but have you felt any of that culture shock, or have you like had a hard time kind of finding the things that you're used to back home on the islands?
Culture shock for sure. I think I spent some time in Japan in 2019, and that's when I really started to like, I loved being immersed in Asian culture specifically, but just cultures that are so different from my own that I think there's a lot of like value in experiencing something that's just so different. Before coming to school here, I had never been to Hawaii, any of the islands. I made the decision because I knew that at the very least would be a story and it would be an interesting experience for me. And so far there's been highs, there's been lows. Me coming from southeastern Washington, there's a lot of white people, and there's a large Hispanic community. So that it was the extent of my cultural immersion, was sort of a a pretty even split between the kids at my schools. But yeah, here it's totally different. I'm sort of on the outside looking into this just completely different thing, and I've really liked it so far.
That's awesome. What if, like, are there, because you went to school last year, right? Like, in person?
Yeah.
Okay. So, have you, like, are there things that you are kind of, like, I don't know how to put this question exactly, but I guess, like, opening up about yourself, like, being in a different state, like, being in a totally different culture, like, is there anything specific that you feel is, like, significant to you that you've, like, learned in general, or just, like, about yourself, like, by being outside of the world you're used to?
Well, I guess something I've learned is I know nothing about my state. I know Walla Walla, and I've been to Spokane, and I can tell you where Seattle is, but I really do not know that much about where I come from. You know, the Oregon Trail and that sort of stuff is something that's hammered home in Washington, Oregon schools, but Californians know a lot. You probably know way more about your state than I do. So that's something that I've sort of learned, but for me specifically, there is it's a lot of like small town experiences that a lot of people that are from bigger cities that have, you know, more to do for people. Like I spent a lot of time just hanging out at the most random places, just doing whatever I could to like kill time to, you know, do that. So it definitely has been interesting to be here. All these opportunities. I can go to the beach. I can go to the mall. Those aren't things you have in southeastern Washington necessarily. So, so yeah, I think I had a really, maybe not unique experience, but it's definitely different than the experience I've been having here.
For sure. I definitely, yeah. I grew up in San Diego, and then I first went to school in Northern California at Humboldt State, and going there was interesting because it was like such a small place in the middle of nowhere. Like, I'm talking, you have to basically take a private flight to get to San Francisco in order to get anywhere else. And pretty much you're just driving 4 hours with no service, nothing really around except trees in order to get into Humboldt County in the first place. And, like, being there, like, I remember going to the mall my first time and being like, holy crap, like, this is, like, a one-story, like, probably, like, 30-store mall, and I couldn't tell you what the stores were. And I'm coming from San Diego, where I'm, you know, it's, like, a 4-story mall, and it was crazy. And what I was trying to get at, though, is I then spent a lot of time in the Bay Area and then San Diego, so all up and down California. And I remember, like, feeling like I was sick of California for a while, and I, like, kind of hated it, and I was like, I just want to, like, leave. And, like, now being here and, like, not really going home, I've kind of realized that, like, there's this weird, like, love that you don't realize for your place that you've, like, grown up. I don't know if you feel that, but it's, like, it's not necessarily that I want to, like, go back and, like, live there the rest of my life. It's more like you kind of, like, find this sense of, like, oh, that's what home means. Like, that's what it means to, like, have your roots. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. That's definitely something I've experienced. Snow is a huge part of, I guess, who I am. I've always loved the snow. I've always loved, you know, being cold. So going from some place that has 4 seasons and to some place that has 1, maybe 1.5 seasons, it's been crazy. Another thing that I didn't really realize was such a big part of me was the kind of typical Western cowboy rodeo kind of agriculture culture, not directly tied to me, but it is something that I am finding pride in. Washington agriculture, you know, apples from Washington, wine from Washington, wheat, grain. It's all over the place, and it is sort of, you know, that's fun. I do come from an area that rodeos are a big deal, agriculture is huge, so it's sort of fun that I do come from a place like that, and that is kind of was part of my experience growing up.
I don't know if you've experienced this, but I've actually met a lot of people from Washington being here. Have you spoken to many people? Like, I guess not necessarily from where you're from in Washington, but like just from Washington in general.
Absolutely. I meet a lot of people from Seattle, Tacoma. I meet people from King County, like Spokane. I've met people from really close to where I am, like Tri-Cities, and a lot of people have the same opinions about a lot of places, which is fun. But yeah, Walla Walla is sort of it's kind of accepted that it's just middle of nowhere, sort of nothing to do farm town. So I think that's been interesting to hear. Just be in this setting and meet other Washingtonians and sort of have that. We both know that Walla Walla is what it is. So that's
Yeah,
been fun.
it's really strange to like. Everyone has their like groups. Like, I don't know what's a good example. Like people from Minnesota. Like when people from Minnesota meet other people from Minnesota, it's like, oh wow, like there's this like love and like you're from Minnesota. I'm also from Minnesota. It's kind of there for California, not really.
Well, there's so many people from California that it's, you could be, Bay Area,
Yeah.
that connection, but even then there's so many people from the Bay Area that probably is every group.
Yeah. Even then, it's just like it's very like interesting to like have these groups of people, we're all in Hawaii and like we meet each other and there's this like there's somewhat of a connection that we have to these people. Like they're strangers, but we're like, I kind of know you because I know how you like grew up in a way. Like I know your roots. I think it's just interesting. For me, it's really interesting just to be on the islands and like there's such a disconnect from the rest of the United States. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like we're in another country, but we're not.
Right.
Sort of like you said earlier, like you wanted to get away, but like not go too far. And that's kind of exactly how I feel. Is this like I'm studying abroad without actually studying abroad in a way.
Exactly.
I don't know. So it's just weird. I think there's this, I don't know how to explain it. It's the mainland and there's Hawaii and we're just like living in this like middle zone right now. And it's kind of cool. I don't know. But yeah, so that being said, what do you want to like take long term from living in Hawaii? It sounds like you don't want to live here after college, maybe like not long term. Maybe, I don't know. I haven't asked you about that, but like it's like speaking just from the idea that you want to stay here just for school. Like what's your main goal to like learn from being here and like going to school here and meeting both the people that are native to Hawaii and that are coming here just for school like you are?
I think long term my goal isn't to stay here. I think it's been awesome and I'm looking forward to the next 2 years, but there is just still so much more that the world can offer me and there's a lot of places I haven't seen yet, so I'll never know for sure if I've made the perfect choice for me, but I'm going to keep looking, at least for the time being. But right now I think the takeaway that I've been thinking about the most and that I do want to sort of apply to other aspects of my life is to appreciate what you have when you have it, because your opinions and your feelings about things can change in an instant, but what really matters is what you do with the here and now, and you can only control like what yourself. That's the only thing that's within your power. So just accepting things and finding peace with where you're at personally, I think is the biggest thing that I've learned while being here.
That's a really good way to put it. I'm going to ask you one last question, and it's going to be really broad. And I want to test this question out because I was thinking a lot about it, and I think it's the question I just like want to ask people at the end of these episodes. Because I think it's something that is very broad, but like it's something that's important that we don't really think about often. So here's the question. If you could just like explain to me, and it doesn't have to be like super, super long, but who are you and like what makes you unique as a person?
That is a good question. That's going to make me think. But I think just knee-jerk reaction, I'm an artist, and I'm a very passionate person. I do everything I do with my whole heart, and I love the people in my life, and I love being able to express my feelings through art, through music, through whatever I'm into. I'm an indecisive person as well. I feel like I'm always on to something new, but at the end of the day, there's just certain things that make me me, and it's the people I love and the art that I make. So I think that's who I am.
Great answer. I like that answer a lot. Well, thank you, Dane. That was the first episode, and that was killer. So I hope this continues, and I'm glad that you were my first person because you have a very interesting story.
Thank you, Trevor, and good luck with your podcast.
Thank you.